Many years ago, my family and I raised a seeing eye dog by the name of Zale. And, we spent a lot of time with him when he was very, very young, teaching him the basics, things like leave it or drop it. Then some more, as he aged, some more of the more advanced things that he would be asked to do, like find the door, find a chair, find a couch. And in my opinion, he was doing very, very well. And so the time came for our first test. And it was decided that instead of going to the grocery store with all of these younger dogs, that it would be maybe too much for them at that point. So we would go to the mall. It would be less distracting there for them. And so as we arrived at the mall, Zale and his brothers and sisters were all excited to see each other again. And, they were jumping on each other and kissing each other. And it was just the cutest thing you've ever seen. And then after that short reunion, we got down to business and we put the little jackets on them to help them understand, okay, now you're on duty, right? You've got to pay attention. And of course, we weren't told ahead of time what our first tasks the test would be on. So, I had really spent some time going over what I thought would be, some of the questions that they would ask us to do. And it came to pass that the first command that they were going to test the dogs on was find the door. And so I was supremely confident because we had spent a lot of time reviewing this task, and I thought that he really had that one down. So, we put on the blindfolds and, they said this is going to help you to understand people without sight, and you're going to really have to trust the dog that you've been training so that, they have an authentic experience in their training, and you can have a good perspective and understand somehow how, people who have limited sight or sight impairment, that they struggle with that. And so I had trust. I trusted that Zale would know and would be able to help see the right way. And so I put the blindfold on and I said to Zale in a confident voice, find the door, and off he walked. And I could tell by, the tension on the leash that he was headed somewhere, and I was like, yes, we're gonna ace this test, no problem. And so he came to a stop, and I took off the blindfold, and much to my dismay, looking back on it now, I can't really say I blame him, but much to my dismay, we were not at the door of the mall, but instead had found ourselves into the line at Mrs. Smith's Cookies. Which, of course, based on previous cookie homilies that I've had, you probably know that he knew that was my favorite of all snacks. Unfortunately, Zale failed out of sight school, but he did go on to have a very good career as a police officer with the Port Authority in New York City. So he was able to use his talents, which were probably more nose-based than sight-based, to make his way in the world. Sometimes we see what we want to see in life. Sometimes we tend to judge others. We fail to see them as who they really are. We fail to see them as beloved children of God. And our scriptures today, they invite us to see the humanity in one another. See the weaknesses, the strengths, the trials, the tribulations, the joys. And of course, our scriptures today call on us to be merciful, as Jesus is merciful. In John's gospel, we heard that the Pharisees and the scribes bring a woman who is accused, caught in the very act of adultery, a crime that, according to the Mosaic law, would result in, or could result in, stoning to death of the individuals involved. Now, this is a strange case because they've only brought one of the parties here, the woman. And of course, we can see through this right away. This is a trap. The Pharisees are interested, along with the scribes, to try to catch Jesus to either discredit him as a good teacher. If Jesus said, "Don't stone her," then he would be defying the law, and of course the law was held with such reverence in the community. Of course, if he agreed to have her stoned, that would have put him on the wrong side of the Roman law. They were the ones who got to handle that type of justice in Judea at that time, in the land of Israel. It's amazing to me. They don't see the person. They don't see the individual, the human being before them. What they want is to use this person's life to destroy Jesus, to tear at his reputation, to discredit him. And they're willing to go as far as taking the life of another person who is just as imperfect as they are. They fail to see in her a sister, a beloved child of God. They only see what they want to see. And there's been lots written about Jesus' reaction to this situation. We know that Jesus kneels down and he begins to write in the sand. And lots of wonderful theologians and people who are far more learned than I have taken time to write and to offer suggestions as to what Jesus was writing in the sand that day. And there's lots of wonderful interpretations. Some have told us that perhaps Jesus was writing down the sins of all those who had the stones in their hands, and that when they looked upon their own sins, it changed their hearts, and they walked away, knowing that it would be wrong for them to cast a stone when they too had sinned before God. In other instances, very interesting, some people say, well, Jesus was overwhelmed and he didn't know what to say. He was trying to buy time. So he sat down and he started to draw or write in the sand. He's trying to figure out what he was going to say to this crowd. And that's an interesting interpretation. As I was reflecting upon the reading and thinking about what I thought Jesus was writing in the sand, a word came to me: mercy. That Jesus, as he bent down, was overwhelmed, certainly, but overwhelmed at their lack of love, overwhelmed that they would be willing to take the life of such a beautiful person who was loved by God, that they were willing to destroy her for their own good, or what they perceived to be their own good. And of course, the scriptures, I think, testify to God's mercy. In the prophet Isaiah, in the book of the prophet Isaiah, he says to us these beautiful and powerful words. He says, "My thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts." Jesus invites us to see in one another a brother, a sister, and not a stranger, not any of the labels that the world might give to us, except for beloved, loved by God, without reservation and without exception. In this Lenten season, we're invited to become like Christ and to be guided by those values of love and mercy and forgiveness. This Lenten season, God invites you and me and all of us to become more like Christ, his Son. To be loving, to be forgiving even with those who are difficult to forgive, to be understanding, to stop judging, to be merciful. Stop judging ourselves, stop judging others, and embrace them as we hope ourselves will be embraced. My friends, this Lenten season we are invited to see one another clearly, to see who we truly are, and to understand who we are, and then to see others the way that God sees them. And maybe if we can do that, not only will we be able to forgive and love one another, but we truly then will also be able to truly love and understand ourselves.
Don't forget to follow St. Patrick's on Facebook or subscribe on YouTube. And please join us for any of our live stream masses this weekend. Details are below in the description. God bless you.
Like burning incense, O Lord, let my prayer rise up to you. Like burning incense, O Lord, let my prayer rise up to